If you type into Google any combination of the words resin, river, table, and slab, you're likely to be overwhelmed by images and videos of blue and green mixed with metallic pigment. So if you need to roll your eyes here, do it, but this is my take on the whole resin, river, table genre. I'm the Naked Carpenter, and today I'm going to show you how I built this live edge walnut slab resin countertop. We're remodeling the kitchen in our house, and on our island I wanted to put a walnut slab with a black resin there that really serves as a focal point of the kitchen. The measurements of this countertop are 114 long by 34 wide. First up, building the mold. I lay out 3 10-foot 2x4s on my bench that will act to extend the base for the mold. I secure these to the bench so they don't move, and I bring in a 10-foot sheet of T111 onto the workbench. A few screws and a few nails, and this OSB is flat again. Using G-tape, which is a tape designed for waterproofing applications, I cover up the face, the corners, and the sides of the mold so the epoxy doesn't stick. I moved the 12-foot slab onto the mold to be trimmed. I trim up the slab on each side, and I fit it into the mold. With the slab snug in the mold, I caulk around a large check in the wood so that the epoxy doesn't spill over when I pour in that area. I then set up the drill, I start measuring out both parts of the epoxy, and then I add black pigment from EcoPoxy to the bucket. I get to mixing, and yes, mixing this stuff is as satisfying as it looks. Once I've mixed all the epoxy, I begin pouring 60 liters, yes, 60 liters of epoxy into the mold. I take this slow, making sure I pour it evenly on each side. Watching this stuff fill up in the mold is quite cathartic. I grab my trusty soldering torch, light it up, and begin to run it over the surface of the epoxy. What this does is it draws any oxygen bubbles to the surface through, I guess what I'm told is science. Then begins the ever so long 72-hour cure. With this thing all cured up, I'm jacked. I call a buddy over to help me load it up into my truck and take it over to my local molding shop, where they let me use their insanely huge surface sander to save me a ton of time in flattening. This was both nerve-wracking but also exciting at the same time, watching the slab go back and forth through the industrial-sized sander. With the slab back in my shop, I move on to stabilizing the large check down the center of the slab with 3 bow ties made out of yellow heart. I chose yellow heart because I feel like the yellow contrasts really well with the brown of the walnut. My process for making the bow ties is this. I start with a scrap piece that I've cut to the width of my bow tie. I then mark the center line of my bow tie on that piece, and then I mark a 17-degree angle from the right-hand corner past the center line. I raise my blade up on the table saw, grab my digital bevel gauge, adjust the blade to 17 degrees, I grab my Incra miter gauge, bring my scrap piece over, put it right up to the blade, add a stop block, and plow through my first 17-degree cut. What I like to do, though, is sneak up on the apex or the middle of my angle. I grab my yellow heart and I start slicing. When I cut bow ties, for a second, everything feels right in the world. There's just something about it. I make sure the point where 2 sides of the angle meet is perfect. I slice the bow ties in half and then start laying them out on the slab. I then mark out the bow ties with my utility knife, and I use my router to scarf out a majority of the waste before then I move on to chiseling up to the line. I then mix up some 5-minute epoxy, mix in some walnut dust to that, and then I set those bow ties. Once everything is dry, I sand down the bow ties, and then I sand down the rest of the slab to 320 grit. And as I do this, my heart is pounding because as I look at the bow ties and the way it mingles with the walnut, I'm getting really, really excited. The bow ties look great, they feel great, and the rest of the slab is looking great. The next task is trimming the edges of the countertop. I start by using a chalk line on the long edges to give me a reference for my track. I lay down my track and I start ripping a straight edge. And all I can say about ripping this stuff with a track saw is it makes a huge mess, and it clogged my saw up like 20 times. It was super annoying. I then move on to putting a 1/16 inch roundover on all the top edges and vertical corners. Then it's on to oiling the top up with Odie's oil, and it is as satisfying as you see on all the Instagram videos. I then call a friend over to help me bring the top into the kitchen, and I set it in place. The top sits on the island, and I am really happy with the way it turned out. We'll see how the Odie's oil holds up over time with my family of 6, but for now, I'm really pleased. The brown of the walnut, the yellow of the bow ties, the black resin, the slight roundover, the 9.5 foot length, all of it comes together, and I really feel blessed and excited at how this is turning out. If you've liked what you've seen and you want more, hit that subscribe button, slam the thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. I'm the Naked Carpenter. We'll see you next time.